All right, folks, if you get in your seats, we'll start in a minute here. I'm just waiting for two board members to come back in the room, and we'll get convened. And there they are. All right, I now call the Champaign County Board Environment and Land Use Committee to order. It is 6:31. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Rogers.
Present.
Storr.
Present.
Esri.
Here.
Goss. Here. Patterson.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Thorsland.
Here. All right, we have a full board tonight. Thank you very much all for coming, and thank you everyone in the audience for being here too. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda and addendum tonight. Joe Mala? Aaron, second. Any changes, any rearranges? If not, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We have the minutes of April 6, 2023 before us. Tonight, I'd first entertain a motion to approve. Moved by Jim. Second by Chris. Any changes, corrections, or addendums to the minutes that anyone saw? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. It's now time for public participation. If you want to speak and you haven't yet filled out one of these forms, they're up there by the double doors, and you can just bring them up to the front desk. Otherwise, I'll go forward with Pat Fitzgerald. And if you could come up and turn on the microphone there, just push the little face and look for a red light, and then just state your name and your address briefly for the record.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
members of ELUC, my name is Pat Fitzgerald. I'm a local attorney, and I'm appearing before you this evening on behalf of Prairie Solar One, LLC, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Baywa Real Estate. Hard to believe the last time I was before this body was back in 2019 on this very project. We had a little something called the pandemic interrupt us in between, but we're back before you this evening with several items that when the county board as a whole approved the Prairie Solar development in 2019, they attached several conditions which at the time in 2019 were not yet ripe for review, but they are now for your consideration. And those items are a decommissioning and site reclamation plan, road use agreements with the county, Sydney Township, and the Village of Homer, a noise study for your review and consideration, and a vegetative screening plan. With me this evening in the audience are a number of representatives from Baywa, as well as some subject matter experts that Baywa has brought to the meeting in the effort to address any questions any of you may have. So when this does come up on the agenda, to the extent anyone has any questions, more than happy to delve into whatever detail you would like. Just in summary, though, in 2019, we listened. We understood that there was some concern with Prairie Solar and Best Prime Farmland. What your county board in 2019 approved was a 1,609 acre development generating approximately 150 megawatts. The current plan in front of you is for 135 megawatts on 750 acres. So that's a reduction of Best Prime Farmland being used of about 859 acres. That's in large part due to, while many things stopped during the pandemic, technology continued to evolve. And the solar arrays that we're using today are able to generate significantly more energy than the solar arrays that we contemplated using in 2019. So to the extent that's a question anybody has, we're happy to get into that in greater detail as well. But in summary, just wanted to make you aware that we do have representatives from the company, as well as the individual who came up with the decommissioning plan and the noise study. So happy to address any questions you may have when it comes up on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. We will keep that all in mind, of course. I next call Jim White. And again, name and address for the record, please.
My name's Jim White from the Village of Homer. I am the current mayor, and I'm here to voice our concerns about several different things with the solar farm that is going adjacent to our property. And I think I touched on these the last meeting, but we are concerned with the setback. I do realize that the state has changed all the zoning requirements for solar farms and wind farms to zero setbacks. But there's a reason why your county zoning board put in a half a mile from municipalities and city buildings, and it's because they're not, well, in our opinion, they're not attractive, and they interfere with a lot of different things. Where this potential solar farm's going in is right next to our village hall, and we have baseball fields, soccer fields, and it'll be right next to the solar farm. And I do realize that they have agreed to put greenscaping around the solar farm. And my concerns with that is the longevity of the greenscape. With being in the middle of a farm field, they're going to spray, and there's almost always drift, and I don't know how long those plantings will survive. Now, I do realize that the proposal is that they're to maintain that, but the same company has put a solar farm in between Sidney and Homer, and they did put a few trees around it, but they're very limited, and it's going to take 10 years, maybe 15 years for them to even get tall enough to obscure the view of these solar farms. So that's a concern for the village also. In our back lot, I know it's like 1,000 feet from our village hall, but in the back lot, we do a 4th of July celebrations with fireworks. We're concerned about, possible damage to the solar farm. We've been assured that it's not going to cause any problems, but who knows? Like I said last time, the company's developing it. They're going to sell it off to somebody else, and they may change their mind in the future. So we're just concerned about the longevity of it. Also, I know Homer doesn't grow very much, but by putting something this large right next to the village limits, it limits or eliminates the possibility of any future growth in that area. Also, the solar farm doesn't provide any jobs for the village of Homer. Possibly there might be a mowing job, but it's very limited. So we could possibly get some kind of factory in there. You say that it's still going to take up the farm ground, but it could potentially provide some jobs. So I don't see any benefits to the village of Homer for this solar farm being that close. If it's a half a mile away, that would be perfectly acceptable. We're not against solar farms per se, but just being that close is, in our opinion, detrimental to Homer. So thank you for allowing me to speak, and if you've got any questions, I'll be glad to answer whenever. Thank you.
All right, thank you, yes. If you could stick around, that would be good. right, I now call Kiara Gavin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the time tonight, and thanks, Jim, for your comments. I will be brief since most of you heard kind of, our thoughts and our goals with Nano Solar at the meeting last month. But to kind of give you a sense and an overview, we chose and have been working on this community solar project. This is a 5 megawatt AC solar project on approximately 46 acres of Terry Wolf's farm just outside of Homer. Based on its location and accessibility, based on the road infrastructure, based on its proximity to the distribution grid. There's a 12 kV line, which is a level that we can interconnect to for a distribution or community scale project, as well as its proximity to the substation that is on the west side of town. In designing the site, we originally proposed back in September when we first submitted to the county and I first started conversations with Homer, a quite different site plan than what you have before you today. And we really did try to take the input of Homer into account as we designed the site and made these adjustments. So I'll highlight a few of those changes, but a big piece of input early on was that the drain tile running through Terry's property is one of the main drainages for the northeast quarter of town. So we've incorporated into our site plan our current best understanding of that drain tile location, as well as a buffer corridor setback from that drain tile. We will also do a drain tile study to identify location of that, as well as all of the tile on the property. We also significantly increased the setback requirements beyond what is in your existing ordinance. So we doubled the setback from the back of the village's property, which is sort of the back of the baseball diamond on the village hall property that Jim mentioned. Noise was also a concern that was brought up during the hearing process. So we did a few things, moved our inverters further north, so further away from the road and the village building. We commissioned a noise study that had, indicators that noise would not be impacting neighbors, but because there were still concerns, we also introduced and in our site plan proposal have a noise fence around the inverters to act as additional buffer of the noise. And then two kind of final elements on the visual side, besides the setbacks, and we are about 1,000 feet from the village property and I think over 900 feet from the road at the closest point. We also introduced vegetative screening along the entire kind of southern portion of the site there, as well as worked with Ameren to move the interconnection poles that are required to interconnect the project to the grid. So these are about 5 poles that hold equipment, some from the project, some from Ameren that are required to interconnect. Those are typically on these projects directly along the existing overhead line or adjacent to, across the street from, et cetera. We were able to get Ameren to agree to move them back further north onto Terry's property. So folks going in and out of the village building don't kind of see them directly on a day-to-day basis if they're accessing that building. So with that all in mind, I think this, is an ideal property for community solar and why we've seeked it out and why we're interested in working in the county and working near Homer and in the Homer community. We've done, our best to design based on the feedback that we've heard and to make it so that the project itself has the least possible impact on neighbors, including the town. And, we think the benefits, the green power, the property tax benefits, the community solar subscription savings that this community solar project offers will add a lot of value to the community. So thank you for the time. I'll be here if you have any questions when you're going through the case, as well as Haley Shaw, who is an engineer who worked on the site layout, as well as the decommissioning plan. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Those are all the slips I have for public comment during public participation. Is there anybody else who wants to talk? Yeah, go ahead and bring that up. And you'll be next. Yeah, Aaron will grab it. Go ahead and take a seat. Thank you. Thanks, Aaron. Suzanne Smith. Again, your name and address for the record.
My name is Suzanne Smith. I live at 2797 County Road, 1200 North in Homer. I just wanted to make a few comments about the decommissioning plan. First of all, I don't know if you know, I'm the president of Stand Up to Coal. We fought for 13 years to stop a coal mine, and so I'm very much in favor of renewables. We have some solar panels on our farm, but as Mr. White and others have said, I think that it's not always desirable to have these nearby, and there are concerns and things that should be addressed. I just wanted to comment on a few things that I saw in the decommissioning plan. It appears that there are 17,400 units that will go into this field, and based on some information that I've been able to get, there is no recycling center in Illinois that will accept solar panels. The closest one right now that I'm aware of is in Cincinnati, Ohio. Solar panels are about 52 pounds each. Right now, the unit price is about 48 cents per pound, so that's about $25 per panel that might be available for recycling purposes. So it looks like with that, the decommissioning plan shows that the solar company will get paid $161,251 for the panels from salvage. But these are 20 years old, and we're not really sure that there will be that kind of a market value for those kinds of recyclables. You have to think of it maybe like an old television. We're not exactly sure what that will be like in the future. Again, I just wanted to reiterate that there are some toxic and hazardous elements that are in the panels that Illinois and our community needs to consider, and what will happen to those down the road. So as you consider these projects for the future, please keep in mind that they will not be recycled here in Illinois, and what they've put into the plan in terms of the salvage and what they might get back may or may not be there for you, for them, and for us. For me, it's I live less than 2 miles from the site, and the idea that this project will be decommissioned, it'll be beyond probably my lifetime. But I do hope that for the sake of my children, for our farm, and for our community, that this will be handled well, both for us in the Homer community and for the state of Illinois as a whole. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, one last call. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. All right, that concludes public participation. We now move on to communications from board members. Does any board member have any communications for the board? Chris?
Household residential electronics, the big one, is on May 20th. Sign up is available. I think if you go for anybody that's in the county, resides in the county, and I know that there's sign-ups available through the city of Urbana and Champaign, but you just need to use those to sign up for a time slot so that you don't have to wait in line.
All right, thank you, Chris. Kyle?
I just want to clarify, I don't think Chris used the word recycle, but it's a electronic recycling event, correct?
Yes.
For that correction. Anything else? All right, seeing none, we'll close that out. Move on to Part 7A. The online registration is open for the May 20th, 2023 residential electronics collection event at Parkland College. Did you have anything you wanted to add, John?
Just that I apologize for not putting that handy website name where you go to sign up. But if anybody has problems with that, they should call our office, 384-3708. We're happy to help them.
All right, thank you, John, and thank you, Chris, for that. It's always a popular event. Item B, the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency notice of application for a construction permit for a diesel emergency generator at the University of Illinois Advanced Computational Building at 1011 West Springfield Avenue in Urbana. This is information only, but John, do you have anything at all you'd want to add to that? It's in the packet.
No.
All right, that's just sort of turning the crank administratively here. This one's a little more interesting. Item C, notice of Champaign County's inclusion in a class action settlement in the city of Long Beach et al. Versus Monsanto Company and the receipt of funds. John, you might want to explain that.
Yeah, the first we heard about this was April 18th, when we received a check for $27,000 as our part of the class action settlement, which we didn't even know we were a part of. It's regarding lawsuits from a number of jurisdictions in California against Monsanto for PCBs, polychlorobiphenyls. The funds are intended to pay for sampling and or any other mitigation at the member's sole discretion. So it's not often the county receives funds from anybody that they can spend at their sole discretion. That's a little hard to believe, but that's what we're told. We included the basic notice as part of the agenda. That notice identified 2 segments of streams in Champaign County, the Upper Kaskaskia and Boneyard Creek. We know that Champaign and Urbana also received funds as part of this settlement. I haven't had a chance to talk to anyone from those departments. I did talk to one person from Champaign a few nights ago. He hadn't heard anything about it. So we're just putting the funds into a deferred revenue account so that it'll be saved until such time as the county board decides what to do. Now, we received a question from one of the committee members, and so you have at your table tonight a short little handout. I don't know when these 2 river segments were identified as being impaired from PCBs, but if you go to the 303D website that's maintained by the EPA, you'll see that there's about 4 or 5 segments of streams in Champaign County that are impaired with PCBs, and most of that impairment has to do with it's in the tissue of the fish. There is for a long time, there has been a warning not to eat more than 1 serving of fish per week from most of our streams in Champaign County. And again, these PCBs they used to be literally everywhere. They've gotten into the environment. They take a long time to degrade, and as they degrade, it just sort of makes the problem worse. It releases them into the waters. The waters are fine. The waters are not the problem, but the PCBs are acted on by tiny creatures, and as it goes up the food chain, eventually it concentrates in the fish. That's why we have this fish caution, although we have fish cautions for more things than just PCBs. So this is a common problem. We don't really know what to recommend at this time, and as county staff talks to municipal staffs, we might develop some plans. We'll keep the committee informed about that, but for the time being, we're just squirreling the funds away.
All right, any questions for John about that? Emily?
Yes, thanks again for putting this together. This is really helpful. My main concern is, again, we're learning it. This seems like almost in real time. Is there a way that we could get this into the packet that's available online now, in case people want to jump on and find out more about this?
This handout will be put online.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, any other questions for John? Chris?
Again, I thank John for putting this together and elaborating, taking away my thunder about the occurrence of PCBs in the environment. These are very dense, non-aqueous phase chemicals, and they're ubiquitous. They were used in transformers hanging from utility poles all over the place, and it is a concern for public health. Thank you for bringing that up. Rick?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, John. Just as a side note, I think when I was in my 20s and worked at the plasma physics lab, we spent 2 months pulling out 200-pound PCB-filled capacitors to remediate a capacitor yard because we learned that, and this was back in the 80s, that they had to go. So, yeah, they were everywhere. Old electricians used to get in a transformer in their underwear and sit in it because they insulated with the oil in these huge transformers you see at the side of the road. And to service them rather than drain the oil out, they would just go in their skeevies and then towel themselves off and go home. So, and they would tell you that they lived forever after that, but I have my doubts. So it's good, and I imagine at some point in the future we'll find something to spend it on. So, all right, moving on to D, Illinois Environmental Protection Agency notice of the proposed renewal of the Clean Air Act permit for the Peoples Gas, Light, and Coke Company Manlove Gas Storage Field, and I will reserve any comments. Anything you want to elaborate on that, John?
No.
Yeah, this is just, again, kind of turning the crank boilerplate that happens. Moving on to new business, items to be recommended to the county board. Bear with me while I read this into the record. Part A, zoning case 074-S22, request by Medanos Solar LLC, P.O. Box 14055, Chicago, Illinois 60614. A subsidiary of Cultivate Power LLC, owned by Brian Matthey, 2819 Buchanan Street, San Francisco, California, 94123, and Noah Height, 231 Beloit Avenue, Los Angeles, California, 949. Via agent Kiara Gavin and participating landowner Terry Wolf, 1409 West Bridal Veil, PI, Oro Valley, Arizona, 85737, to authorize a community PV solar farm with a total nameplate capacity of 5 megawatts, including access roads and wiring, in the Ag 1 and Ag 2 agriculture zoning districts, on a 48.64 acre tract in the southwest quarter of the southwest quarter and the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter, and part of a 197.02 acre tract in the east half of Section 4, Township 18 North, Range 14 West of the second principal meridian in South Homer Township, and commonly known as farmland owned by Terry Wolf, on the north side of County Road 1100 North, County Highway 15, northeast of the village of Homer, Illinois, and including the following waivers of standard conditions. Part A, a waiver for a distance of 0 feet between a PV solar farm and the municipal boundary in lieu of the minimum required 1/2 mile of 2640 feet per section 615B2A of the zoning ordinance. Part B, a waiver for not providing a decommissioning and site reclamation plan that includes cost estimates prepared by an Illinois licensed professional engineer prior to consideration of the special use permit by the board per section 611A3 of the zoning ordinance. Part C, a waiver for not entering into a roadway upgrade and maintenance agreement or waiver therefrom with the relevant local highway authority prior to the consideration of the special use permit by the board per section 615G of the zoning ordinance. And Part D, a waiver for not completing consultation with the State Historic Preservation Officer of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources prior to consideration of the special use permit by the board per section 615K of the zoning ordinance. Before we get into discussion, John, do you have anything to add?
No, just that the information in the packet is the same information that the committee received last month, so there's no new information on this.
Right, this set here for a month so that we would give people time to comment. And the only thing I'll point out is when we get to B of this section, there is a decommissioning and site reclamation plan, so we can discuss that waiver later. I open up the floor to the board for any discussion. We had a lot of it last month. We do have people here, both from the village of Homer and from the petitioner, the solar farm. If you have any questions for them, now would be a good time to ask. Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate my complaint and my disdain for this case. It certainly is Mr. Wolf's desire to do with his land what he wants, but it is inside the 1/2 mile of the boundary of Homer, and I do not believe this sets a good precedence for us moving forward.
I do not want to start this nonsense of putting a solar farm on the outside of every rural village in this county. I don't see that. Champaign-Urbana would not want their entire boundary covered up by solar panels either. Even though we approved one, it's in a small corner of Urbana I guess that was last month. I just don't believe that we should set this precedent, and I will be voting no.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Other comments? I have a few, but let me start with, this was, as pointed out in the packet, it was voted, recommended denial by the Zoning Board of Appeals 3-4. I read through the findings of fact, and I'm going to point out a few things in there. And I know a little bit about the zoning board. I was the chairman of it for longer than I care to mention back in the day. When we would find things to deny or approve in the zoning board, we were asked to provide the evidence for that. After a bunch of findings, if you look at page 35, the findings of fact begin for this case. And you notice that it's subject to the special conditions imposed herein. Oh, this brings back memories, John, just reading that. This is so designed, located, and proposed to be operated so that it will not be injurious to the district in which it shall be located. And they point out the streets are adequate, the location is adequate, emergency services availability is adequate. The special use will not be compatible with adjacent uses because of a resolution of protest by the Village of Homer, which cites incompatibility concerns with the prospect, but it doesn't give any concrete evidence as why. It says surface and subsurface drainage will be adequate, and we had testimony tonight about moving the entire farm and providing a long corridor for the drainage, and they're going to do a drainage study. Public safety will be adequate because the Homer Fire Protection District has already been working and has their comments as far as training and what they're asking for. Provisions for the solar farm, parking will be adequate as no parking is required, but they then find that it's not well suited overall, despite the fact that the majority of that was in the positive. There's a long list of special conditions. There was a lot of negotiation with the village, the landowner. The solar farm company worked very hard to make changes. Kara pointed some of those things out. If there's questions about some of the details of that, feel free to ask. Continuing on, they talk about the special conditions being imposed, and most of the findings there are positive, but then they say the waiver is not in accordance with that. That's not an unusual thing. And then moving through more of it, in the end, after saying that it will not be injurious, that it is in accordance, that special conditions exist, that make it a particular place, to put this particular thing, that regulations, if we impose them fully, would prevent reasonable and otherwise permitted use of the land. And yet they find out that that it will not be injurious to the neighborhood, to the public. That's one of the main findings. And then they go through and they list all the special conditions, which run from A through H, I, and on through. And I can tell you when I look at this all the way to M, with multiple parts and parts of those letter designations, when I see that, it tells me two things as a former chair of the zoning board. They worked very, very hard, both sides, and the zoning board did, to come to a middle ground with this. And that's reflected in the vote of 3-4. The Village of Homer, I understand Jim's concerns, but a lot of them have to do with their perception of what the solar farm will do to the Village of Homer, and not really hard facts of what it may or may not do to the Village of Homer. This is not in the Village of Homer. Homer has not annexed this. I know we have a law in the state that says that a little municipality can have some say over what happens for 1.5 miles around it. We had an interesting map a long time ago that showed these little villages and the space they take up, and then the area of what's called the ETJ, and a large part of the county then becomes blanked out for things like this. And Another thing that Jim even pointed out in his statement was, Mr. Wolf owns this land. He's made an agreement with the solar company. He's going to basically farm the sun as opposed to farming corn or beans or wheat. They've moved way back from the village hall. They've moved the power poles. And he does have a right to do what he wants on his land. Homer hasn't annexed this land. They provide no service. And Mr. Wolf can't vote for anyone who's on the board in Homer because he doesn't live in Homer. I'm inclined to make this recommended to the county board because the vote was so close in the zoning board, and because of the fact that when I look at all these findings, what I see is both a positive finding by most of these findings of fact from the zoning board, and a real concerned effort, even recognized by the mayor of Homer, of the petitioner and the solar company to work very hard to move things. There's changes in the vegetation that they will use to shield the farm. There was this movement of the physical borders. There's this half mile, and they talk about this zero setback, but the zero is the property line. The solar panels are 1,000 feet back from the property line, which is 50% already of this. The state did come in and change all of this and took away a lot of our control of what happens with both solar and wind. So I'm not sure how much, total authority we have over this. So I'm going to vote to move this to the county board for a full vote in the county board with a recommended approval from ELOC. Any questions or comments again to me, or are there any questions for either the petitioner or the mayor of Homer, who are both here and have stayed to listen to me babble? Aaron?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I'll just have some comments. I'm going to be a no vote, and the main reason is Homer doesn't want it. They're my direct constituents, and I'm not going to say that Homer's wrong. If a proposal such as this was right up against Champaign-Urbana, and they said no, we don't want it, but yet they truly can't protest it, the same as Homer truly can't protest this, I have a feeling that most people would say, oh, okay, Champaign or Urbana doesn't want it, so we'll vote against it. In part because, gee, there's such a big city in this county. Well, Homer, being a small village, yes, but why do they not get the same consideration in that hypothetical situation, which I think would probably turn out that it would be a override of their protest, even though it's not an official protest, or people would go with their protest and say that's enough of a reason to vote a project like this down. Yes, I do commend the Kira and the solar company for working to make things better for Homer. But I don't fault Homer at all for asking for these improvements, but yet being against it. Why wouldn't you try and get the best out of a bad situation? If you were in Homer and you don't want it at all, but yet you realize it may happen despite you not wanting it, why wouldn't you try and get the best that you can out of it? Like if someone was going to build a apartment building right next to your house, why wouldn't you try and get them to maybe put a extra tall fence to maybe keep the noise down, try and keep the noise down if you could, even if you didn't want the apartment building, but you realize it may go there despite you not wanting it anyway. I mean, that's just kind of to make an example of it. So it is nice to see that this company was willing to work with Homer and make changes. But again, Homer has decided that they don't want it there. I haven't heard anybody specifically from that area at the ZBA meetings that I've attended. I don't believe I have, or here at ELUC, say that they wish this project would go through. Now, granted, Terry Wolf, who owns the land, would like to see it go through, but he doesn't live here. So yes, he can't vote for any of us on this board, but yet he doesn't live in the area anymore. He used to live basically across the road from where this is going to come in at. A little bit to the east, but basically across the road. But as of right now, he's an absentee landowner. For good or bad, he doesn't have to put up with the repercussions of this. He doesn't have to look at it. He doesn't have to potentially, see what happens when and if it gets shut down and how long it would take to be decommissioned, to truly get taken out or anything like that. So yeah, my vote will be a no. And that's my reasoning. Thanks.
Other comments? I appreciate that, Aaron. I would say, just speaking for myself and not as the chair of ELOC or even a member of the county board, but if I was put in the position of having a solar farm up against Champaign or Urbana, I would also vote for that. Because if Champaign or Urbana wants to not have it, they can annex the land or they can grow around it. It wouldn't be the first time a city grew around a solar farm or a wind farm. The one thing I don't want to become part of the debate before we get too far is the difference in the rights of an absentee versus a residential landowner. A landowner is a landowner, it's their land. I don't want to have a case come before us where we decide because they don't live on the property, that maybe they don't live in the state or the county, that they somehow have less right to do on their farm ground what they want to do if they had, still had the house on it. So I don't like that. I don't like the word slippery slope, but that would be something that some people would use there. So, any other comment? Any other input? Kyle?
I just want to say I will be supporting this. I don't want to be redundant, but I agree with a lot of the things Eric said about property rights. And I guess I just want to acknowledge that, it's been acknowledged by the village that there's not anticipated growth. And so I think that to hold back what somebody could do on their private property because of the possibility of something that has already been said is very improbable is not a good enough reason. I think the company's made a lot of concessions and adjusted their plan in a good faith effort in response to some of the complaints that they've received. And I also will say, since I've been on the board, we have overridden at least 2 protests from the city of Urbana.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Any other comments? Any other input? Any questions for the petitioner or the mayor? All right, hearing none. Okay, roll call. Jim calls for. If we're ready to vote, would the clerk call the roll, please? You need a motion. Okay, yeah, we need a motion for Kyle. Do I have a second? Sorry, I neglected to ask for that. Jim is the second. All right, now we're ready for the roll call. The motion was, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, I would entertain a motion to approve this and move it to the county board, case 074S22. So moved by Kyle. Do you still second, Jim? Nope. Do I have another second? Jamala? All right, now we're ready for the roll call.
Rogers,
Yes.
Storr,
Yes.
Esri,
No.
Goss,
No.
Patterson,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. All right, thank you. The motion passes. We'll move that on to the county board. Moving on to B. This is the decommissioning and site reclamation plan for zoning case 074S22. a request by Meadows Solar LLC, PO Box 14055, Chicago. I'm going to skip forward because we've read this into the record before. To approve the decommissioning and site reclamation plan for the PV solar farm in zoning case 074S22 with a total nameplate capacity of 5 megawatts, including access roads and wiring, in the Ag 1 and Ag 2 agricultural zoning district on the 48.64 acre tract of the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter, and part of the 197.02 acre tract in the east half of Section 4, Township 18 North, Range 14 West of the second principal meridian in South Homer Township, and commonly known as farm ground owned by Terry Wolf on the north side of County Road 1100 North County Road 15, northeast of the village of Homer. And John has some details on the decommissioning and reclamation.
Yeah, last meeting, we mentioned some concerns, some things we noticed about the costs and the decommissioning and site reclamation plan. The applicant got in touch with this week, and we worked through those issues. Turns out I had done those calculations. I had actually used not the approved decommissioning costs, and when we used those, we found out that the Medanos costs are exactly midway between the Rantoul solar array and the Windsor Road solar array. So I think that's great that we have these three projects and their costs are all centralizing around there's a 4%, 8% spread overall, but just a 4% difference. I think that's pretty good, and apologize for the errors last month. And I thanked Kira and her crew for getting in contact with us and working through that.
All right, thank you, John. That's good information to hear. So a little more realistic cost estimate. And they do seem to be clustering. So especially if they use that one particular gentleman who does the hauling. So are there any questions or comments? The engineer is here who did the decommissioning and site reclamation plan. If anybody has a question for her, now's a good time to ask. All right, do once, twice? Nobody? Okay, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the decommissioning and site reclamation plan for zoning case 074S22? Motion to approve? All right, Kyle, a second from Emily. Do you want a roll call on this, Jim, or? Sure. Okay, we'll have a roll call on this. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Rogers,
Yes.
Storr,
Yes.
Esri,
No.
Goss,
No.
Patterson,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Thorsland.
Yes. All right, that motion passes. Moving on to C, zoning case 035AM21, a request by Jeffrey Jenkins doing business as Walnut Grove MHC to amend the zoning map to change the zoning district designation from the Ag 1 agricultural zoning district to the R5 manufactured home park zoning district in order to operate the proposed special use with waivers in related zoning case 036S21 for a proposed 8-lot expansion of a non-conforming manufactured home park on 9.68 acre tract of the northwest quarter of Section 10, Township 20 North, Range 9 East of the 3rd Principal Meridian in Somer Township, and commonly known as the Walnut Grove MHC, with an address of 1513 County Road 2300 North, Urbana. Do you have anything you want to add, John?
I would just note that Mr. Jenkins is here tonight.
Okay.
I assume he would be happy to answer any questions the committee has, as would I. I mean, this is a pretty simple case. It did take a lot of work. We have never, the zoning board has never approved, there hasn't even been one proposed, an expansion of a manufactured home park that used on-site septic systems and wells. So this was a learning experience for everybody at the zoning board, and we were able to finally, working with Mr. Jenkins, the zoning board of appeals recommended approval. So
Okay, thank you, John. Are there any questions for Mr. Jenkins since he's here, or comments, Aaron?
Just a quick question for John. How many total ZBA meetings was this at? I know it was at probably at least 5 at least. I mean,
That's the number that comes to my mind, 5.
thanks. Like I said, I was there at the ZBA meetings on at least, I think, 3 of them. And I know it had been at least one before, and I know of one I missed. So I was thinking probably around 5.
Although, to be fair, with one of those meetings, Mr. Jenkins' case took all of about 5 minutes because that's all the time was left in the meeting. And that was not his fault. It's just, it was a packed agenda.
Right, again, does anyone have a question for Mr. Jenkins? Or a question in general? Chris?
Thank you. I have in my notes, and I looked at the plan, and the, Mr. Mayor from Homer kind of addressed this in his remarks. Is there any landscaping or something that's going to be around the mobile homes to kind of mitigate some of the ag chemicals that might be used in the adjacent farm ground?
If you're here, if you want to come up, just state your name and address quick for the record. And Mr. Stewart's question.
Jeffrey D. Jenkins, 13426 Maverick Road, Marion, Illinois. The question is, the areas that does not have a home on it, you're asking, is there going to be prairie grass or will it be improved?
Maybe I should clarify. As I look at the map and I look at the layout of the mobile homes, I notice that some of them, are these butting up against or fairly close to the property line?
No, none of them are.
It's awfully small print, so I can't really, I can't really make out what's written here.
Dr. Stewart, if you look at page 72, there's sort of an aerial shot.
I can
shows some
clarify
buffer.
in every case.
Yeah, 68 and 69 is what, oh, okay, yeah, there we go, okay,
On the east side, if that's what you're looking at,
73, okay.
am I on?
Okay, I do see, thank you for calling my attention. There does look like that there is some buffer along the boundary and at least a couple of trees to kind of provide some wind buffering. And are all these being served by private wells, individual wells?
Yeah, turn it back on again, just leave it on for now.
Am I on now? Okay. There is one well. It's a 5 horsepower well. It's down 141 feet. It's from the same aquifer we drink out of in this building. 5 horsepower brings a lot of water. I have storage, a 3,600 gallon storage tank. Our necessity for 20 homes is 3,000. Additionally, there's 400 feet of 6-inch water main that was placed on the whole north side of this property when it was originally built, 1972. The water line is 6-inch, made of Schedule 80, if you know plumbing sizes. That's over 1/4 of an inch thick wall. The reason Charles Hepler did that was he was going to extend another couple hundred feet to the east and put 2 new roads in a radius around what exists right now and put in 121 homes. So that's why there's excessive storage right now for just what we have.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Jenkins? And thank you for coming down tonight. All right, hearing none. If there's no further comments, I'd entertain a motion to approve This is C, zoning case 035 AM, the request by Jenkins for the Walnut Grove to amend the zoning map. Moved by Jamila. A second? Second by Emily. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, that passes unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to D, approval of documents fulfilling special conditions for zoning case 896S18. Baywa RE, a request by Prairie Solar 1 LLC, a PV solar farm that was previously approved in case 898S18 and ordinance number 2019-1 on January 24, 2019, and that is wholly owned by Baywa RE Development LLC via agent Brandon Reinhardt, Associate Director of Development for Baywa RE Solar Projects LLC, 18575 Jamboree Road, Suite 850, Irvine, California, 92612, to authorize the following documents pursuant to special conditions in case 898S18. 1, a decommissioning and site reclamation plan. 2, road use agreements with the Champaign County Highway Department, Sidney Township, and the Village of Homer. 3, a revised noise analysis with proposed revision of the special condition requiring noise reduction kits and inverters. 4, vegetative screening around the relevant portions of the fenced area. And John, you have some comments, maybe?
Yeah.
You do have some suggestions.
So we have 4 different things here. The committee isn't really approving the road use agreements so much as just acknowledging that they've been executed. We have the decommissioning and site reclamation plan, which is, this is 135 megawatt on however many acres, the 750 acres. So this is magnitudes larger than any DSRP that the committee has seen so far. And because of that, at a staff level, we had questions on the prices, and we went back and forth with the engineer, and we got to a point where we just simply couldn't do anymore. And so I don't know what to say, except we think those prices appear to be not out of whack, but we really have nothing to compare them to either. So there's the road use agreements. The noise analysis, this was a big thing. In the original special use permit approval, the petitioner agreed to accept a noise limit of less than 39 dBA. That's much lower than what the Pollution Control Board limits are. And at the time, they even agreed to use noise reduction kits on the inverters. And again, that was back in 2018 with the redesign of the layout. Oh, by the way, regarding the layout, we do have a figure in the on page 86 that illustrates the shrinkage of this solar farm compared to what was approved in 2018. And with that shrinkage, it's no longer anywhere near the main drainage ditch for the drainage district, and so a lot of those concerns go away. But anyhow, that's our best effort at illustrating how much smaller it is. But one thing that happened is they reduced the number of inverters, used different inverters, and the noise study that's in the packet documents that this solar farm, as it's designed now, will achieve less than 39 dBA without using noise reduction kits. And so we have revised the special condition, okay, which if the committee, whatever action the committee takes, you should read in the revised special condition, which doesn't require the noise reduction kits in the beginning. The ZBA also included a condition for a post-construction noise study to document compliance. And so the revised condition says the noise reduction kits would not be necessary if the post-construction noise study documents less than 39 dBA. And if it's more than 39 dBA, then the noise reduction kits have to be used. And so, at a staff level, we thought that seemed like a fair way of dealing with the concern about this lower noise limit that seems to be met so far. And if it isn't, then the noise reduction kits could be used. So that's what we would recommend for that. And then the vegetative screening, since the agenda was mailed out, we did receive comments from another neighboring landowner who has apple trees and wanted the arborvitae within 1,000 feet of her trees. So we have a new landscape screen plan dated May 3rd, 2023, and we will use that date in whatever final action happens. We also had a larger size version of the landscape buffer plan here tonight, but the 2 weeks that we'd sent this out, we did get comments, and the petitioner made a change to the landscape buffer plan. So that's just a brief overview of all those things.
All right, first, at the behest of staff, I'd like to read in the change to that. This is special condition H that we would like to waive, and then revise special condition I, and this I would include just by default in whatever motion we make to approve or not approve. And let me read that as it reads now. A zoning compliance certificate shall be required for the PV solar farm prior to going into commercial production of energy. Approval of a zoning compliance certificate shall require the following: a noise study to verify that the noise level without the sound reduction kits for all inverters is less than 39 dBA noise level at all existing residential lots within 1,500 feet of the project site, or sound reduction kits will be required. ELOC shall review the noise study and determine if the sound reduction kits are in fact required, and if so, whether an additional noise study is necessary. And that would basically be a revision of special condition I from this case back in 18. So consider that part of it. And the BayWa representatives of multiple disciplines are apparently here tonight. And so if there's any questions from anyone on the board about any of the parts of this, and again, we're talking about the decommissioning, site reclamation, the road use, not really the noise analysis, which we just talked about, and the vegetative screening, which some changes have been made. So any questions for any of the folks who came down? Very sorry to tell you that, but thank you for making the trip. Last chance. All right, then I'd entertain a motion to approve the documents fulfilling special conditions for zoning case 898S18, including those 4 items, and with the change to part I of the special condition. Moved by Kyle. Do I have a second? Joe Mala, I have a second. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, that also passes unanimously. Thank you very much for all of that, and thank you everyone who came to answer questions. E, annual facility inspection report for the period of 4/1/23 through 3/31/23. Is that right? Are those dates right?
That is not right. It should be 4/1/22.
Yeah.
Apologize for that.
Yeah, that's future time travel. For Champaign County's National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, MS4, Stormwater Discharge Permit with the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, also known as IEPA. John, do you have any comments? Or?
No, I just would like to thank Trevor Parton, the young man who prepared the paper on the PCB impaired waters. Trevor prepared this year's report, and we have to get that into the EPA by June 1.
Okay, and I assume that if the board passes that, that shouldn't be a problem. Aaron?
I'll move to approve, but then also just thank John and his staff, and especially Trevor, it sounds like, for getting this done. I know it's a yearly thing, and it's always, I believe, kind of you have plenty of other things on your plate besides this, but being a requirement, you have to get it done. And I just appreciate you and your staff have got it done again. Thanks.
Yeah, there's an amazing amount of crank turning that goes on in the office there, and this is one of those things that I think I've said those words for like 15 years or something now. So yeah, Aaron, you're right. They do a lot of work just to make a lot of work, and then we just voted through. Without any more, all those in favor? Oh, where's my second? That's right. Second by Kyle. Now, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? All right, that passes too. All right, thank you very much. Is there any other business before the board tonight? I don't see any. There's no chair's report. Designation of items to be placed on the consent agenda. That would be 8, I believe, to C, D, all 4 parts, and E. All right, if there's no other business, this meeting is adjourned at 7:36. Thank you very much, everyone.